Kate, she'll be here.
Welcome, everyone. It is September 17th, and we are at the Southern Human Services Center for a regular business meeting. I am not going to read the charge to you. You can all do that, but basically, we ask that everybody respect each other in this room. This is a safe place for everyone to speak what's on their mind without anyone giving them a hard time about it. So, thank you for that. We have our arts moment with Emily Cantano. And Katie is supposed to introduce you, but she's not here, so we're going to let you introduce yourself. Does that sound good? Great. Welcome.
All right, thank you. This seems about right. So hi, everyone. My name's Emily Cattaneo, and I'm a graduate of the NCSU Creative Writing MFA program. I am a fiction writer and a journalist, and my short stories have appeared in a number of magazines. I'm interested in sort of speculative fiction as well as literary fiction, and I was longlisted for Best Science Fiction and Fantasy 2016. And as a journalist, I've written for venues such as the Boston Globe, I'm originally from the Boston area, as well as Slate and NPR. And currently, I am the co-founder of the Redbud Writing Project, which is a new adult education creative writing school here in the Triangle area. And our mission is to bring the rigor and care of an MFA-style education to the general public. And just a quick plug, our website is redbudwriting.org if anybody is interested in learning more about us. So I hear that the arts moment is supposed to be a light moment before the meeting begins, but my story that I'm going to be reading from today is actually a bit dark, so I apologize for that. I'm only going to read the opening, so it's quite short, less than 4 minutes. But the story is called The Birch Circle, and I wrote it during my MFA program, and it takes place in Stalinist Russia. Very light setting. Hannah keeps a photograph of herself and Raina on the rickety table that leans towards her bed. Whenever she comes home to her shoebox of a room in Ulica Yegonovna 18, after she shrugs out of her coat with its ripped lining, she always stops to look at the photograph and thinks of witches. The photograph is the first ever of her and Raina, shot 4 years ago with a Zelnet 35. In the photograph, the light is flat as steel. It is winter. The two of them pose on cross-country skis, looking over their shoulders at the camera, their ski tips angled towards the unbroken snow that stretches to the birch and larch forest behind the dacha. Raina cants to the side, struggling to balance, while Hannah is straight, poised, dutiful. A glob of white mars Hannah's lapel because, even though she is an adept skier, a few minutes before the photograph was taken, her bad blood pressure swirled her head and sent her reeling, dizzy, into the snow. Usually, when Hannah regards this photograph, she feels pride, something she rarely feels otherwise. She usually thinks of how she and Raina were headed to their birch circle when that photograph was taken. But tonight, she feels only hot shame. Hannah doesn't know much about witches, but Raina hoards banned folklore books. She tells Hannah that witches were powerful beings and that in stories, czars and firebirds and princes sought them out for favors or fled from their wrath. She says that witches had the power to change things, even small things in small corners of the forest. She says that in real life, she thinks witches might have held those powers too. Hannah touches the edge of the photograph. 4 years since they met, and as of tonight, 7 days since Hannah telephoned Raina at the university, and her secretary said, "No one by that name works here," and Hannah raced, on foot, to Raina's flat off Stalingradsky Prospect, near the ice of the Odvodny Canal, and found that Raina's name had already been stripped from the door. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. Okay, we're going to move on to public comment, and this is for items that are not on the printed agenda. And you all have 3 minutes to speak about those matters on the printed agenda. Please sign up the sheet, and we will consider that when we get to that item. So first up, we have Mr. Dan O'Leary. And Dan, you know the routine, 3 minutes.
Don O'Leary.
Oh, Don, I'm sorry.
Hey, folks. You know, I haven't been coming to many of these meetings lately, and about a year ago, I mentioned to Mr. McKee over here, said I don't come to these meetings.
This mic.
I mentioned to Mr. McKee that I don't come to these meetings unless you do something I consider unconstitutional or stupid. Well, what you're doing with these gun things, and what I heard last week, is both, falls in both categories. I don't for 1 minute believe any of this is about noise or about safety. This is about a mindset. Speaking about Stalingrad and Uncle Joe, I see this as a communist approach at whittling away at our rights. You're taking our God-given rights, our unalienable rights, and you're inching away like boiling a frog slowly. I don't see this at all as any kind of protections. You're trying to take away our protections. You're here so to protect our rights, to protect ourselves. That's your role. Your role is not to undermine our Constitution, crap all over us, and wipe your bottoms with our Constitution. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. Neil Galloway, and then Riley Ruskey.
I'm here to submit a written petition regarding open meetings. Under the rights protected by the United States Constitution and local governments, I, Neil Galloway, petition the Board of Orange County Commissioners to open all scheduled meetings to include work sessions to public comment. To do otherwise is to deny timely and open dialogue between those who are represented and those charged with public trust. The Orange County Commissioners' denial to allow public comment at their work sessions on a firearms ordinance could be interpreted as a refusal to consider opposing views. It could also be interpreted as a commissioner's intent to forge an ordinance which limits the rights of some citizens under the guise of public safety. Regardless, such a denial does not foster public trust in our elected officials. When a commissioner proposes a guideline for a firearms ordinance based on his land ownership and comfort level rather than a study of tried and trusted norms such as definitions of suburban density and enforcement potential, it smacks of past times when landed gentry made rules which suit them. In our democracy, this is an abuse of power. All Board of Orange County Commissioners' decisions should be based on facts and responsible stewardship of public funds. Open dialogue with the public educates and reminds our elected officials to carry out their duties responsibly. It is requested the Board of Orange County Commissioners allow public comment at all meetings and work sessions on firearms and all other matters, and not allow their personal convenience or self-determined bureaucratic rules to deny timely and pertinent public voice on matters which affect Orange County citizens and legal residents. Respectfully submitted to the County Clerk, Neil Galloway.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway. And just to respond to you quickly, we plan on bringing that discussion to a future work session when we talk about how our board meets. The petition already came in from Commissioner McKee, so we'll just add your petition onto Commissioner McKee's. Yep, you can give that to Donna. Thank you so much. Yeah. And Riley Ruskey.
Good evening. At the September 3rd Board of County Commissioners meeting, I presented a petition regarding the Pledge of Allegiance at all BOCC meetings. This is a very simple, straightforward issue that requires at most 15 minutes of discussion and decision by the board. The board chair responded that there is a process to be followed and the board would proceed with that process. In the BOCC meeting follow-up actions list, this petition is noted as requiring 2 months for a letter to be drafted for an information item, whatever that means. A second, more complex petition that was presented is noted as done. Clearly, there's no consistent process for the processing of citizen petitions. Therefore, I present the following. This citizen's petition is presented under the protection guaranteed by the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States for the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievance. Riley J. Ruskey, a United States citizen and legal resident of Orange County, North Carolina, petitions the Orange County Board of County Commissioners to accomplish the following. 1, create a written process or procedure for handling citizen petitions, which includes timelines for completion of actions by the BOCC. 2, direct Orange County management to permanently post this procedure on the Orange County website homepage with a sincere invitation to the citizens of Orange County to avail themselves of the petition process for better communication to the board. 3, direct Orange County management to establish and maintain a database of petitions submitted to and actions taken by the board and provide a link to that database in the above posted procedure. 4, to complete all these actions by November 1, 2019. Taking these actions will serve to improve communications between citizens and the board, provide for more open government, establish the ability of citizens to see what other citizens are asking of the board, and hopefully reduce the distrust citizens have for the board. Should commissioners deny this petition, petitioner requests that they make a verbal and written public announcement as to why they are denying it. And I'll present this to the clerk. Another thing I would like to note today is Constitution Day, which is part of Constitution Week. It recognizes the 232 years since the Constitution was ratified by the Congress of the Confederation. These are the foundations of our country's existence and our rights protection as citizens. I hope you all take note of that.
Thank you, sir. Okay, folks, we're going to move on to number 3, announcements, petitions, comments by board members. And Commissioner McKee, let's start with you.
I have no petitions tonight, but I'll hope that I see in the follow-up actions on the petition from a board member on Pledge of Allegiance at our last meeting, the status is letter to be drafted for information item. I would hope that letter would also be sent to that petitioner as well as any other member of the public that brings a petition. I hope that they would get a letter back, get a formal. I'm sure that seems to be our process. I just want to make sure that we can
That is the
follow
process,
that.
yep.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bedford?
This afternoon, at least 3 of us watched a webinar with Secretary Cohen from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services that was billed as a Medicaid expansion update, quarterly update, but since that's all been extended until February, it was more about the opioid epidemic and crisis. And there's just a lot of information on the state website.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh, Commissioner Price?
Several things. First, I've been Ralph, I'm going to mess up his name, I know, Ralph Gavalieri and his wife Elaine Malik Madani, they are interested in naming a body of water near where they live to Glass House Creek. And in order to do that, it's recommended that they get a letter of recommendation from the governing board. So I have kind of an outline of what they're requesting with the PIN number and all of that, as well as maps. And I hope that we can consider this at agenda review and then pass it on to this board for approval. And there are various criteria that they have to meet, making sure that there aren't any other cultural impediments on the land. That will be done. I have spoken with one of the tribal members in this area, and she says she knows of nothing. And I asked Earl if he knew of anything, being a longtime resident here, a lifetime resident, and he didn't. So I hope that we can move favorably on this, and I will give this to the manager to look at. Secondly, I went to the Family Success Alliance celebration on Sunday, and it was wonderful to see the success of our Family Success Alliance. There were a lot of families there, children having a good time, and it was just good to see the work that we have done and the response. I was at the ABC board meeting this morning, and they wanted me to report out that things are moving along for the construction of the new Hillsborough ABC store, and they were looking forward to an opening in November, somewhere around November 11th, with a grand opening in December, but that date has not been set. And then finally, the U.S. climate strike. I know that there is going to be a gathering in Chapel Hill on Friday, September 20th, to join with groups around the world on the climate strike. And the one at Chapel Hill it will be at Peace and Justice Plaza. And I would just hope that if students here decide that they want to engage in that, I would hope that our administration, school administration, would consider this a teachable moment for our students as they learn. And I do also know that there will be some folks from Carroll Woods that will be either down there at Peace and Justice Plaza or somewhere on MLK Boulevard. But I think, I know this may rub with parents a little differently, but being one that was active in the 60s and 70s with walkouts and sit-ins, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't support them. But I think that this is a very good cause, and we should support them.
Commissioner Green.
So tomorrow, as your delegate to the our partnership to end homelessness, I and the other three jurisdictional delegates will be participating in Dr. Allison DeMarco's social work class, like she does every year. She asks us to come in and talk to the class, which is students who are going to be working with the Community Empowerment Fund to talk about various issues of racial equity. And then we're asked, each of us, to bring a proposed problem for a set of the students to work on. And I'm going to bring them the problem of or an issue that's been on my mind, as you'll know when I tell you, is the H+T index, housing plus transportation. I'm going to ask them to do some research on it and give us a recommendation as to whether, given our rural situation where we can't run a bus to every low-income house, but we have an interest in good public policy, whether that's a thing for us to consider or not.
Thank you. Commissioner Markopoulos
Nothing tonight, thanks.
and Commissioner Dorson.
Yeah, I just want to report, I was at the Fire Chiefs Council meeting in July and August, or July, and I know they're coming, we have a meeting with them coming up, and one of the issues that I think will be on that agenda, and which they have talked about, is there's a need for some additional money for the training center. There have been some additional construction requirements, putting the thing down there on Millhouse Road in Chapel Hill. It's probably about $60,000. And, given that we had originally hoped that this would be located in the center of the county, ideally on the Durham Tech campus, and that wasn't able to work out, although there's still some talk about maybe in the future. I just want to flag that for your attention coming up, and we should think about whether we can provide those funds to get that finished. That's all I have.
Thank you. I have two things. Last meeting, I told you we got a letter from Governor Cooper about the budget. Senator Phil Berger thought he had to follow up with a letter, so there's also a letter from him saying that Governor Cooper's letter didn't provide all the facts, but I think that's kind of a moot point right now because of what they did for the vote. So if anyone would like to read that letter, it's there. The climate walkout, they're asking everybody to please take public transportation. So if you are going to go to Peace and Justice Plaza, there's a list of all the buses that would stop at Peace and Justice Plaza. So I would hope folks would do that. And then lastly, Mark Markopoulos and I went to, we did a field trip to Insorga, which is it's a new technology of taking trash and turning it into fuel. And about 10 years ago, the representative came here to talk to us about it, and at the time, we just weren't set up for that. But times have changed, and we had a really nice visit. Robert was there, head of our solid waste, and two folks from solid waste were also there. And the conversation was really not about how we're going to do it, but when we're going to do it. Our solid waste in the future has to be handled differently. Recycling 5 years from now is not going to be what it looks like right now. So we're going to have to think about the effect of solid waste on climate change, but also how we can long-term make it better for places like, for example, the cement factory right next door that was taking a good amount of this sort of packed it, after it comes out of the process, it's just, sort of this packed fluff. Well, they push it all down, and it becomes material that can be burned to fuel the cement plant. And so right now, they were 100% coal, now they're 80% coal and 20% of this, this waste, which is pretty exciting. We talked a little bit about if that could happen at UNC, because we've had this conversation about when UNC is going to stop using coal. And they have talked to UNC, and the setup that they have there just didn't quite fit with how this moves. So if something, and I think something will happen at UNC, they're going to have to refit what the coal plant looks like right now, because those trains just come in and drop the coal. This is a very different process of a truck coming in and supplying this after waste. But something that Mark and I had a lot of time in the van, because it's a 5-hour ride up and a 5-hour ride back, and we had a lot of talks about what we could do as a county and what we can do as leaders. And it just reminds me of, as we're listening to these forums and we're hearing about planting trees and changing light bulbs, that's low-hanging fruit, and I think that's important to do. Every step is a good step. But I think people elect us to think past that. And going on this trip really just sort of clicked in my mind that we've got to start thinking about our trash sooner than later. So I'm glad that we're going to start talking about this at SWAG, but I think as county commissioners, we really need to start thinking about this as well. It would have to be more of a regional plan for us. It couldn't just be our county. We'd have to get possibly Durham and maybe Chatham to get involved with this as well. But sooner than later, we're going to have to do something. So I just want to keep that on everyone's mind. I brought the Ensorga back, and I also sent the Forbes article out. Do you want to add anything to that?
Just one quick thing, there was a concrete plant, actually a cement plant.
Cement
Sorry,
plant, yeah.
There was a cement plant on the horizon just about a few miles away, and they were actually located there. It was a short trip with the fuel. And we were thinking of all the concrete plants around here, like Chandler, outside Hillsborough, and Ready Mix and Carborough. It's not concrete plants, it's cement plants that make the binding cement that then goes to the concrete plants. But it's a pretty successful operation. This whole plant runs with only 5 or 6 employees at a time. So it's got a lot of promise, and we're going to be looking into it deeper.
Yeah, and also there's future of putting solar on anything. And as we're talking to Medline, who's saying they're going to put solar on and fire up 50% of their plant with that. The way that we recycle, we've got to think about how we're going to fire up these plants. It's got to be something solar or renewable energy as well. So we'll bring that to SWAG and start having those hard conversations, because it costs money. It's not inexpensive, and that's the thing that we all have to come to a realization of. If we're going to fight the climate crisis, it is going to cost money. So
I have a question.
Yeah, Commissioner
So when you burn the trash, right? Do they burn it, or
they
what?
do burn it like they burn coal.
So what does it give off in terms of gases?
It's clean. It's
Really?
not. They take everything out of it. I mean, we watch the process from beginning to end, and everything that is not clean burning is taken out. Some of it goes to the landfill. Some of it does go to recycling. So glass, metals, aluminums, or just things that the way that it's separated out does not go into the burn. It's interesting. You can read it.
I would say it's cleaner. It's
Cleaner.
not totally clean.
Well, it's not.
But
Nothing's totally
It's a
clean.
huge
That's true.
improvement on coal and coke, which they typically use at these cement
Yeah.
plants.
It's
And then
pre-
you have to factor in the environmental impact of landfilling, driving your trash to transfer stations 20 miles away, and then to a landfill 100 miles away. So all that's factored in.
And the whole plant is operated with pretty robotic. So, and it doesn't smell around the plant. It's amazing. Not until you open up a door, and then the air sucks everything in. So there's very little odor around the plant as well. I know that's something that we've always had to deal with here, but, so, yeah, I encourage you all to watch that Forbes thing. Yeah, Commissioner.
Yeah, I
Peterson.
want to ask an unrelated question. I just wanted to know if any of the board went to this. There was a press conference in Chapel Hill schools today about this new software that they're unveiling to monitor, purportedly to make sure schools stay safe. And I wasn't able to go, but among education advocates and children's rights advocates, there's a lot of concerns about these software programs that schools are using. They're collecting a lot of data on students, what they're doing with it, how it gets used. I have a lot of concerns about that, including some of them gather stuff off of students' private emails and social media, and it's not just ones that look on computers that they're using that is owned by the school. So I wasn't able to get to this press conference today, but I wonder if anyone did, and if not, I don't know when the next school collaboration meeting has been set, but it would be great to get some information back about what's actually going on there, because there are a lot of problems emerging across the country around how that data is being used, shared, and in some cases, to students disadvantaged personally. So
I'm going to take that as a petition to add that to the agenda. Is that okay?
that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Proclamations, resolutions, special presentations, we do not have any, so we're going to move right to our public hearing. 5A is a public hearing on refinancing existing bond obligations. The board will conduct a public hearing on the issuance of up to $24 million to refinance existing debt to achieve debt service savings, and consider voting to approve a related resolution supported the county's application of the Local Government Commission, LGC, for approval of the finance plan. And who's doing this? Is Gary and Bob as a tag team, or just Gary? Okay, thank you, Gary. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. With the favorable interest rate markets, we have been working with our financial advisor to look at savings to the county overall. So the purpose of tonight is to hold a public hearing and then have you vote on a resolution in support of an application to the Local Government Commission so we can proceed with the financing. So we had a public hearing.
Gary, can you move the microphone over a little?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
So we had a public hearing, and we had a not-to-exceed amount of $24 million. That was actually just to give us flexibility in structuring the financing. When we do go out to market, the amount that we probably will end up with is around $16 million. The last run, which was done, debt service run, looking at savings, was about $650,000. We expect at the time of pricing that will be between $500,000 to $600,000, and we will come back, as you know, with a final financing resolution at that point. So just basically some of the terms of the financing. There's no extension of maturities, which the rating agencies like to see. We have a county policy of 3% savings. That's measuring the overall savings as a percentage of the refunded bonds. And so we are above that threshold of 3%. The repayment, of course, is property taxes. This is a limited obligation bond, which is rated a notch below our general obligation bonds. And so we are expecting ratings of AA1, AA+ from Moody's and Standard & Poor's and Fitch. This interest rate savings just gives you a context of the 5 series of bonds that we have focused on. You can see the interest rates there of, for instance, Series 2010 GO bonds of 3.49%, and the 1.9% is what we're looking at. Again, the Series 2012, 2.45%. The current interest rate market is 1.65%. The Series 2013, 2.13%, and the current interest rate environment, that's 1.34%. The Series 2016 is at 2.55%. The current interest rate environment is 1.44%. And the Series 2016 is 2.3%, and the current environment interest rate is 1.5%. This just gives just a breakdown provided by our financial advisors of of the overall savings on the transaction. So the financing calendar is such. We had the public hearing on August 28th. Tonight is the vote seeking approval, and then again we would come back on October 1st. October 1st, we'll be combining this refinancing and the new money piece for it, which includes the northern campus. So that'll be culminated into one transaction, both for the new money to support our CIP and this refinancing. So with that, close the presentation.
Thank you, Gary. Questions for Gary? Commissioner Bedford.
I'm just curious, so the debits to the liability for the interest payable, where does the money that we save go in the budget?
The money, it will go to, we budget in the general fund, so it will be accrued to the general fund.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Gary. Need a motion to open up the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner McKee and Price, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against?
I'll
Okay.
I'll move that we submit the local government.
Well, we have to see if anybody wants to talk in the public hearing first.
We don't have anyone that would like to speak, but Commissioner Markopoulos, would you like to close the public hearing?
Be glad to.
All right, I need a second.
Second.
Commissioner Price, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And Commissioner Markopoulos.
Well, move that we submit this to the local government commission.
Okay.
Second.
Markopoulos and Price, all those in favor? Aye. Against? Okay. Commissioner Price.
I just wanted to say kudos to Gary Donaldson and your team for having the insight and taking the time to find this savings, to identify and find it. Thank you.
Okay, that is it for public hearings, folks. Let's move on to our regular agenda, number 6, please. The board will receive additional information regarding a refund request made by John C. and Catherine K. Gubert at the June 4th, 2019 BOCC meeting and take action on the refund request. And this is our tax administrator, Nancy Friedman. And I believe you have company. Welcome, Nancy. It's exciting to have you here as your first official duty.
Can't say I'm not nervous.
You're fine.
I'm Nancy Freeman, Tax Administrator. I have with me Dawn Perry, who is our Deputy Manager for the Land Records GIS Division, and also Michael Burton, who is our Manager for the Land Records GIS Division. At the June 4th Board of Commissioners meeting, we presented a refund request for Mr. Goubert for overpayment of taxes for 2014 to 2018 for his property at Lake Orange. He stated that double taxation occurred on land between the 615 and 620 contour lines of his Lake Orange property, and that he had been taxed for property he did not own based on an incorrect survey from the 1970s. This item was tabled, and per the board's direction, we are now providing additional information on the matter. The abstract for this item includes key points for your reference, and we have a PowerPoint presentation to illustrate the information, and Dawn is going to do the presentation for us.
Welcome.
Thanks. Good evening. So we wanted to start with just a little bit of background on the Lake Orange area. Originally, 5 families came together and deeded a large tract of land to what is now known as Lake Orange Incorporated. Lake Orange Incorporated then turned around and deeded the area to Orange County that would become Lake Orange, the water body itself. Both of these deeds refer to the same survey and refer to quote-unquote contour lines as property boundaries. Here you can see sections of both of those deeds as well as a copy of the survey that they recorded in 1967. Specifically, according to the deed from the 5 families, one of the lines goes from point B, which is shown in the red circle on the survey, and then follows the 620 contour line to point D, which is shown in the blue circle on the survey. You can see in the green circles where they have labeled that line with the number 620. So now, in order to map any line, you need both the direction and the distance of that line. This survey does not provide either at any point along the 620 line. Due to this, we could not establish where this line runs along the ground, and we are unable to create this property boundary. In this slide, this is the deed from Lake Orange, Inc. to Orange County. Uses that same survey, and it states that its line goes from point C, shown in the red, follows the Traverse 615 contour. The legend on the survey defines the Traverse 615 contour as a line with both a direction and a distance, as you can see in the green circle there. Each line has its own specific direction and distance that changes as the orientation of the line changes, starting from that point C and moving east along that line. Sorry, I'm nervous.
You're all doing fine. I don't really nervous about it.
Because y'all are like the board. Okay. Taken together, the two original deeds establish a gap between the 620 and the 615 contour lines that Lake Orange Incorporated retained ownership of. So now we fast forward to the groovy year of 1976. 9 years after the initial deeds and surveys for the entirety of Lake Orange went on record, this survey for the Arrowhead subdivision on the eastern side of Lake Orange was recorded. It did not recognize the ownership of the established gap by Lake Orange and made claim to the same area of land by carrying every lot from Arrowhead Drive to the waterline of Lake Orange. This waterline was previously established as the Traverse 615 contour in the original Lake Orange survey that I just showed you. So this is the deed that was recorded in 2002 when John and Judith Guibert bought their property, and it does refer to the 1976 survey that we were just looking at.
So can I just stop you for a
Yes,
second
please.
and ask some questions now before it gets too far along?
Sure.
Just to make sure I'm clear. So could you go back a couple of slides?
Tell me when.
Go back to the first one that has the blue line on it. The first,
This one?
the original survey, or it's page 5.
Page 5.
Yes, this one, that's
Oh,
all,
okay.
the one that's all blue. Okay, so this, according to this survey, the land between 615 and 620 is identified as being owned by whom?
Lake Orange Incorporated.
Okay. And then on the next slide, according to this survey, that same land in question between 615 and 620 is being shown as owned by whom?
Lake Orange Incorporated.
Okay, so these both show the disputed area as being owned by Lake Orange Incorporated.
Correct.
Okay, now the next one. Now this shows the land as being owned by whom?
Arrowhead subdivision.
Okay, so this is a change from what we just saw in the other two.
Correct.
Okay, and then the next one is the deed, and this deed reflects the slide we just saw that the area in question is owned by the development.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
So
Thank
this
you.
side shows the Guibert property shaded in blue to illustrate how it was depicted per the survey that their deed referred to. So here you can see how the Guibert property was originally mapped according to that 1976 survey. It was one entire parcel going from the road to the waterline as the survey depicted. Even though Lake Orange Incorporated had already laid claim to the property between 615 and 620 contour line, nothing had been recorded in the 9 years between the original survey and the time of this 1976 survey to define that 620 line. Because we create a picture of land which cannot be used to settle land disputes and is used for tax purposes only, and because we have no way to determine where along this land the 620 contour line runs in order to map it, we had no choice but to map these parcels as that 1976 survey described. We, as the tax office, knew there was a problem in this area with multiple parties making claim to the same land, but there were no legal documents we could use to try and fix the issue. Since 1970, in an effort to try and keep the public aware of the issue, we have made sure to put a disclaimer on every one of the original paper maps that touched any part of Lake Orange. That disclaimer states, quote, "Land between 615 and 620 contour belongs to Lake Orange Incorporated." That practice has continued through the decades, even as we moved away from paper maps. This disclaimer is still shown in multiple areas in our GIS around Lake Orange as of today. This is the plat that was recorded by the Guiberts in February of 2019. When we received this, we followed our procedures in order to split the property along the line the surveyor had defined as the 620 contour line, which is shown in red here. This was the first time that the 620 contour line was defined with directions and distances as required, and it was over 50 years after the original survey was recorded, and only defines the 620 contour line as it pertains to this particular piece of property. We have updated the mapping to show this property split into 2 parcels per the new survey. The transparent area that you see has been put into Lake Orange Incorporated's ownership, while the solid area represents how the 2019 survey defined the Guibert property. Here you can see 3 of the parcels from this subdivision where the owners have rectified the situation on their own. The Guibert's property is the one with the blue. All 3 of these properties have hired a surveyor to find the 620 contour line and then had that survey recorded so that we could update the mapping. As required by statute, any changes the new surveys make that affect the value and taxation are effective for the following January 1st. Anytime a resident has brought up this matter, we've advised them to follow this course of action in order to fix the issue. Until the 620 line is defined, both Lake Orange Incorporated and the individual resident have recorded documents making claim to the same area. And because North Carolina statutes require us to be governed by recorded documents, we can only be as accurate as those recorded documents allow. Oh, that was tough. Thank you all for not being so mean.
Thank you.
Okay.
Questions? Commissioner Dorson, then Markopoulos.
So just those maps that you showed, the first ones, with the blue and the red line, with the blue and the green line, were those recorded?
They were 1967 when those deeds were recorded.
Okay.
Commissioner Markopoulos.
So the other landowners that didn't seem to be concerned about it, did they just think, did they not know that Lake Orange owned, also was claiming rights to the property, and they just let it ride, or why did they not do anything?
Honestly, I don't know that we know. Go ahead.
That's not something that we would have the opportunity to tell a landowner because they would be looking at buying it from an individual, and we would not have the opportunity when they're making that transaction to say, hey, by the way, you need to get this issue cleared up. That should be something that happens, I would think, at closing by an attorney who had done research on the property to find out if there were any issues with it.
And as I stated, we do put disclaimers on all of our public maps, so it would literally take 5 minutes for a realtor, an attorney, a surveyor to go and look at the GIS, and we have it flagged everywhere that 615 to 620, Lake Orange Incorporated owns this. Does that help? The best we can do.
I'm just curious, it just seems odd that some people picked up on it and others didn't.
I think it depends on the person. It may depend on their level of doing research. It may depend on the attorney that they chose, and whether they looked at a map and got a map from our office and were aware of the situation, or whether they did it without looking at a map, purchase the property that way.
Land is shaped. I mean, some people might not have land in the zone.
True.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Mark?
I said it could also depend on how the parcel is shaped. If you look at that map, there could be some people who's outside, who may not have property in there like these folks do.
Right.
Yeah, you can see that actually on the first maps where the line sort of meanders along the shoreline, yeah.
Yeah. Additional questions? Okay, John Guibert would like to address us. You have 3 minutes, sir, and then we can ask some more questions.
Okay, well, this is a very complex subject, and there's a lot of information to take on. I wish it was more illuminating than fogging, but let's start with your question, Commissioner Markopoulos, excuse me. You asked, why did other neighbors around here not pick up on this issue? Well, the fact of the matter is that what we have here is a situation where the owner of the Arrowhead land, the Nichols family, who, by the way, was also president of Lake Orange, Inc. at the time all of these deals were made, when the land was transferred from the 5 owners to Lake Orange, Inc., and then land from 620 down, and also the transfer of the 615 nominal height of the lake and down, which translated what Lake Orange is. who knew full well who owned what. And by the way, just one other point on who owned what. The way the deed was in the sealing the deal, the agreement between Lake Orange, Inc. and the county in the creation of Lake Orange and also the creation of various rights and responsibilities, you have a situation where the county basically required that the land between 615 and 620 be owned by Lake Orange, Inc. They wanted to deal with an entity that owned it all the way around the lake, and they wanted to make sure that it couldn't transfer. So they also put a right of first refusal on it, so that an advance notice, if there was any case where there was going to be a transfer of that land to another property, another, and this was a county requirement. The county had to have advance notice and had the right, first right of refusal to match the price. So basically, the county wanted to protect that 915 to 920, which was the maximum flood stage. It's how high the maximum flood that you would have, that level is the 620 level. So basically, the county would have had to have been informed and had an advance notice to do something about it if there was any transfer of any portion of the land between 620 and 615 to any entity other than Lake Orange, Inc. It is absolutely 100% unequivocal that that land is owned by Lake Orange, Inc. And the owner of Arrowhead subdivision, who was president of Lake Orange, Inc., knew full well. Why did they make that error on that plot? Beats me. But
Continue, sir. It's fine.
It beats me, but he did. And what happened when they came 3 or 4 years later to start selling the parcels in the subdivision? They realized they'd made the mistake. So if you go back, well, if you look at what my deed looks like, every deed, the very first deed for every parcel, every one of the 15 lots on Lake Orange, Inc., of Arrowhead subdivision, basically said, with the exception of land between the 620 and 615. That does not convey as part of the sale. Bobby Nichols knew they'd made a mistake. They didn't solve it by a survey. They solved it by an indication that this 615 to 620 elevation contours were exempted. They also, by the way, did include a new survey of sorts, and that went on through the 1980s. That was an attempt at the same time to show where the lines lay on the 620 to 615, or the 620 contour. For whatever reasons, technical reasons, the staff rejected those for every one of the 15 lots. Maybe they didn't like the surveyor, maybe he didn't use the right techniques, but whatever. But the fact that there was an acknowledgement that Bobby Nichols and the owner of Arrowhead subdivision, every time he made a first sale for any lot, tried to correct it. He didn't correct it the way they'd like to have seen him correct it, by having a perfect survey that met all the requirements and clearly delineated it. But there's no doubt that Lake Orange, Inc. knew who owned it, and there's no doubt that the owner of the subdivision knew who owned it, because he was president of Lake Orange, Inc. And there's no doubt that the county wasn't informed of it, number one. So on the one hand, you've got a situation where the county had to be noticed for any sale of that land. Number two, you've got a situation where the county was advised. It's kind of amazing. About 5 years later, all of a sudden, we had 2 new people come up with subdivisions that hadn't been subdivided around the lake. Fairly large subdivisions, Belasheen and Deer Run. And by gosh, in 1991, the word had gotten out that this is all kind of screwed up and then that they better do a survey for those 2 subdivisions that did delineate the 615 to 620, and they did. And so you want the question? The word was out that that was what was going to be required. It hadn't been done. They hadn't figured that out early enough to make Bobby Nichols do it for Arrowhead, but they did do it for those other 2. And they constitute the majority of the quote-unquote rest of the people. Almost 50% of the people have done this voluntarily, which implies that they did it as individuals. There were a few individuals, but most of it was due to those 2 and 1 other subdivision around the lake. doing it right in the first instance. So what does it come down to? What comes down to the issue here? The issue is, and first of all, in order to know what one might want to claim in terms of back taxes, one needs to know how much land you're talking about and what percentage of your taxes that constitutes. So I did a survey to make sure that that was clearly defined. How much of this land was between 615 and 620 belonged to Lake Orange, Inc., not to me, but I paid taxes on it. Since I bought the property in 2003, I paid taxes on it. Part of the reason, and I would have paid taxes on it no matter what that deed said, as long as there wasn't a plat that fixed the problem that occurred back in 1976. So absent my doing a survey, I couldn't quantify it or have a basis to fix it. Once I did that, I have a clear-cut case in my mind that I paid taxes on land that belonged to somebody else, and I was assessed it, and they knew it going back to the 1986 plats that were included with the deed as Appendix A for all 15 Arrowhead subdivision lots. So the question of ownership of the 615 to 620 is crystal clear. The county would have been advised if there had been any sale. There has never been any sale of 615 to 620. It was established to give to Lake Orange, Inc., and it still belongs to Lake Orange, Inc., and it can't get out of Lake Orange, Inc.'s hands unless you are advised of it 30 days in advance and you have the opportunity to match the price. You wanted to make sure that land was controlled, and that was from the very beginning. So the ownership is clear, in my mind. Whether there was double taxation that occurred, that's also pretty clear. Very prima facie, I can show you the tax bills going back to 2003 that we were taxed on the full size of the lot, which is 1.90 acres, including the land we owned and the land that Lake Orange, Inc. owned. We were able to quantify recently the amount of land in the band 615, 620 is 0.37 acres, and the county has accepted that, and they've changed our property taxable land to 1.53 acres. So that's now taken care of. But for the previous 5 years, heck, for probably the previous 40 years, whoever owned that land was being taxed for all the land all the way down to the water line. Okay? So I paid tax on land that I didn't own. So is it double taxation? Well, I guess it is by definition. If two parties pay tax on the same thing, that's double taxation. And that's a pretty easy thing to look at from an end result. I clearly paid it and can prove it. And did Lake Orange pay taxes? Yes. If you go back to the Lake Orange taxes, Lake Orange Inc.'s taxes, what is it based on? It's based on a plot of land where the marina exists, and the rest of it is all from that original one where the blue line was on, from the band band around the lake from 615 to 620 elevations constitutes the rest of it. So the marina land is, if you want to do just a basic thumb check to see is what's a sanity check here, or what's a reasonable check, does it look like you can show clearly that that land was taxed? Well, the marina is about 12 acres of the 55 acres that Lake Orange, Inc. is being taxed on. That leaves you, 43 acres that's distributed around the band between 615 and 620 around the lake. Well, guess what? There are around 100 lots, plus or minus. If you say 100, just as a rough term, that means you're dealing with about 0.43 acres per lot that belongs to Lake Orange, Inc. What did I just tell you ours was? 0.37 acres was proven to be within that band. So that is a reasonable test. I think that's pretty clear. Certainly, the staff can tell you on what basis they've been taxing Lake Orange, Inc. for what they believe constitutes the 55 acres. The only thing it can be is the marina and the band around the lake. And I don't think they'll tell you that they didn't tax Lake Orange, Inc. Lake Orange, Inc. actually had some problems paying their taxes on time for several years. But they've paid the taxes. They've been taxed on that land, as were we. The staff itself says that if double taxation occurred, I quote, then the Guebert should be eligible for a refund.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at this picture it's on page 13 of this PowerPoint, if you could flip
Yes.
to that.
Yes.
I just want to get it up on the screen.
I don't know what page.
It's the one that has the blue arrow and the red arrows.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah, so that blue arrow is your property, right?
That's correct.
Is that your dock or pier there that's sticking out into the water?
That is correct.
And you built that?
It was
And
built
you-
before I bought the,
But you use it?
I use it.
And you regularly access it through that parcel or that section
Yes,
that
and I have
doesn't?
an easement to do that.
Is that easement recorded somewhere?
Yes.
Do we have a copy of that anywhere?
It's an easement for every lot in that subdivision. Just like there was an easement, I think there's an easement for every, actually, there was an easement granted to each of the 5 families who own the land from 620 out. And they were, when they get donated their land from 620 in and below, they were granted an easement in 1972, all of them were, so that they could prepare themselves for subdivision and sale. So that's when it happened, and it's all documented in deeds,
I think
warranty
John would
deeds.
like to say something.
Okay.
I was just going to point out that there is an easement recorded on the new plat that they had prepared, and that provides access across the land that, over the issue, the land where that was subject to this issue.
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Additional-
Thank you for your time.
Sure. Additional questions?
Well, oh, wait a minute. There was a question about, if I may,
Sure.
were you getting to whether fees are charged for access
No.
across that? Because there really, you have ingress and egress and access. You have to pay fees for recreational rights to Lake Orange Inc.
So to take your boat out there?
Actually, they've translated that into for having a dock, having a pier, having, you name it.
Got you, thanks. That's helpful.
Okay. Additional questions for Nancy and group? Commissioner McKee?
Yes. On page 22, it's got the value. I'm going to use 2018 as to frame the question.
Is that one of the parts of the slide, page 22?
Yes. It's next to the last page in the abstract.
It's not in the PowerPoint, it's,
Oh,
yeah,
no,
it's in the abstract.
itself. Basically, my question is the value of $512,000, is that value on just the land, just the acreage itself, or the acreage and the improvements?
One second, there we go. That would be the entire value for his property. That would include the land and his improvements.
So
Any improvements.
if the land in question, the .39 acres, that would not give the financial impact there that's shown, would it?
I'm sorry, the adjusted value would show you the difference between the 512 and the 482. That would be the value of
Of the
that portion.
.39 acres?
Right.
Okay, that's what my question was.
Commissioner Bedford?
On that page, it says the value is $1,622.43, and on page 16, there's a calculation that says $1,658.15. Which number should I be considering?
I believe, let's go back to page 16. I need my tacky finger. This is what Mr. Guibert provided, the request for property tax refund. And I'm not sure, Mr. Guibert, I know our figures did not match what you had. You might have more information to explain.
There was a slight difference in your calculation from mine. I'm not contesting that.
Okay, so page 22.
So
Correct.
16 is from the applicant, and 22 is from our staff.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to go with what's on page 22. Commissioner Orkopoulos?
So reading about the overlappage issue, it seems to say that both Lake Orange and the Gee Bears were paying taxes on that strip of land, right?
That's correct.
Because the prior surveys both made claim to that same property. So we know that taxes were
That's
coming
correct.
from both entities. So I'm curious about, the state law seems to be a major part of this story. Could our attorney explain that to us a little bit better?
I don't think I can.
Okay.
So if it's proved to be a double taxation issue, you can correct that. And that's what's been done. They've provided a new survey that shows the difference in ownership, and going forward, you can correct that. But prior to that date, when that survey was recorded, the surveys were conflicting, the evidence is conflicting, and the tax department doesn't have clear evidence to say who paid what and how much. They don't have a clear statement based on the land records of a double taxation issue.
Because they needed a clear deed on the property?
Well, all of these plats that were recorded in error and clearly closing attorneys and real estate agents not doing their jobs and pointing these issues out allowed there to be this confusion. If you know, I don't see how there could, I don't know of any way to record something that is retroactive. I don't know how to do that.
But in the end, we got twice the amount of taxes from that land. That's one fact of this, right?
I would ask the tax folks to confirm that that's the case.
Can you ask that question again?
So it seems that we did in fact receive twice the tax value from that piece of land.
Well, basically, we taxed based on the deeds that were recorded. And once the deed was changed, we were able to change what we taxed. So, I mean, and now that that line is established, you know, we are able to change it and able to tax him at a lower amount, a lower value. But because that line had not been defined, we did not have a way to know if what was being taxed and what was not being taxed there, or
Right.
by whom.
So we didn't know, but the overlappage meant that the money was coming in from both parties for that piece of land, right?
Correct, an overlappage, correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Dorson and then Green?
Yeah, so I just think that's the real issue, right? So we have collected twice on the same piece of property, not through any fault of our own, but because there were these conflicting claims, although it seems like the first plat that was recorded showed the lake owned it, and it seems like that should be, since they were first, that should be the defining thing. They certainly, that is Lake Orange Inc., believed they owned it. They paid the tax on it. They haven't contested the new plat that's been filed showing that they don't own it. And so it seems to me that, you know, in the law, they have this concept called unjust enrichment, right? Somebody, you got a benefit of something that you didn't deserve or shouldn't have gotten. And so it seems like this, you know, that you could take a narrow view of the phrase double taxation to mean one taxpayer got charged twice for the same thing, or you could take a more broad view of double taxation, which would say the same parcel got taxed twice. And in this case, since it doesn't seem like there's actually a dispute between the parties over who owns it anymore, if there ever was one, or there was confusion, it seems like the appropriate thing to do would be to refund the taxes because it was double taxed. The property was double taxed, and I think we can justify it in accordance with the state statute that it was a double taxation. It would be a different case if nobody paid the taxes, but they said you own it, and they said you own it, and then we would have to go and get some kind of judicial determination of who actually owns it. But it seems like, based on the order of these things being recorded, based on the pattern and practice of Lake Orange paying the tax, that, and the fact that this is now corrected and everybody seems to be copacetic about that, that what we ought to do is refund the taxes.
Commissioner Green?
I agree that it looks like there's been an equitable issue of unjust enrichment, and since we're the other party, we could decide to pay it back. But the question I have is, if we were to do that, would we then also be obligated to pay it back for all the previous owners of the property back to 1970-something when the subdivision was created?
I think,
No. No.
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Well, my answer is no.
You would have 5 years from the time that you would, actually, basically, you would have to request a refund. The landowners would need to request a refund, and they would be able to request back for 5 years. The 5-year limitation would, at this point, I think we have 2 or possibly 3 other landowners who have actually recorded a survey so that we actually, if they requested it, could give them a refund.
So these folks can only get 5 years of a refund?
Correct. Yes.
Not back to 2002 when they bought the property?
Correct. It's only the 5 years.
Statute's very specific about the 5 years.
Yeah.
And the other part of that is there are roughly 75 more parcels on Lake Orange that have not had a corrected survey who may do that. And those are people who would also be able to request the refund for 5 years in the future.
But again, it's on property that we collected tax double. We collected tax from 2 taxpayers on the same land.
Correct. Both parties were taxed for what they claimed.
Right. And so now we have property owners who are resolving the claim, making it clear that they don't own it. We have the other taxpayer who's making it clear they do own it.
And per statute, we've corrected the record based upon their new recording of survey.
Right.
And their correction moves forward.
Right. So I just want to caveat the point that there's these other landowners, you know, sort of this idea that we're opening up a Pandora's box, but what we're, again, they're only going to be eligible to get it if we could say that the property was taxed twice. So, you know.
And only for 5 years back.
Right.
Which is about $1,600, so if you think about 75 properties, it can add up. Commissioner Price?
But maybe not everybody has as much land as, I mean, if you
That's
looked
right.
at that slide, you know, some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller, and
That's right.
some of them may not have any because of the contour of the.
It also may be that all parties won't be willing to give up that area back to Lake Orange now that they may have an adverse possession. There are many cases that have gone to Supreme Court to argue over overlaps of land. One of the most precise things in those courses and in those cases is that individual has been paying taxes on that land all along and has that claim as such.
Commissioner Price?
So I have a question. It seems basic, but how exactly are you taxing land? Because I had an issue with my property, and the former tax administrator said that it's the same amount for the land. It's really there's one set amount for the land, and you know, and then the improvement, the building is assessed. So, is there actually an additional cost? I mean, are you doing it by square footage or square?
By the acreage of land and based upon the schedule of values adopted by the commissioners.
Okay, so what he told me was wrong. Okay, and so if we did this here with this property, then that means anyone who's had a dispute, because I know that there are a lot of properties in Orange County that have not been, I mean, people bought the properties, it wasn't surveyed, it was just, you know, they recorded the deed, but it didn't have a survey. They could come and also get a survey done and see whether or not they've been paying double or over?
There are a little over 55,000 parcels in Orange County, including condominiums, of which each and every one of those neighboring properties could each have surveys done, of which both surveys may overlap with each other.
That's what I thought.
I mean, there definitely are other cases in Orange County that, you know, that we have noted on maps, you know, so that we are aware that have not been corrected yet. And there could be, more other situations that would come.
Two questions. First, has this been corrected now, going
This is-
forward?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Which
That-
is
That's
the-
good to know.
To follow the law, yes.
And the second question is for our attorney on the recommendations. It states, manager recommends the board approve the attached resolution denying the refund based on consultation with the county attorney. Mr. Attorney, could you explain your thinking?
Sure, what I'll say is that this is, as I've mentioned to you many times, there are only a very limited number of reasons why you can issue a refund. Clerical error, unlawful tax, or tax for an unlawful purpose. At the time this was taxed, it was not a clerical error. It may have been a land records error by the people who were filing land records, but it was not a clerical error by county staff. It was not a tax for an unlawful purpose because the tax proceeds were used for lawful purposes. And it was not, at the time it was taxed, an unlawful tax because through their land records, through the recordings, two parties were claiming the same property. And because of that, we can't say that this is an unlawful tax. We can't say it's an issue of double taxation. Even though two parties were paying the tax on it, they had what appeared to be lawful claims based on their recorded documents. And that's the reason why, based on the risk to the board for refunding a tax outside of those three purposes, that is why my recommendation was not to refund this tax.
And you continue to stand by that?
I do.
Thank you.
And that's covered in page 2, the last paragraph, where you say if the issue were not determined as double taxation, the board would be at risk of personal liability to anyone in the county who challenged it. And anyone can challenge that?
Any taxpayer in Orange County.
Commissioner Markopoulos.
So I think I hear what you're saying is that the county could not reasonably be responsible for sorting out these land issues wherever they may occur, right?
That's correct.
As in the end, you might say, well, it's, we got taxes from both parties, and somebody should get some money back. But on the other hand, it's not the county's responsibility to be there at the transaction, to examine transactions, and confirm that, all the i's are dotted and t's are crossed and everything's right.
That's correct.
So that makes sense.
Commissioner Green.
Yeah, focusing on that last sentence in that bullet, the bottom of the page there, if the issue were not determined as double taxation, the board would be at risk of personal liability to anyone in the county who challenged it. What is the it in that sentence?
The refund. Yeah, that's not very clearly written. If this is not an unlawful tax, if it's not a tax for an unlawful purpose, and if it's not a clerical error, and the board issues a refund anyway, then each member who votes in favor of that is personally liable for the refund.
Well, who has standing to challenge it? Anybody in the county? Any taxpayer?
Taxpayer in the county.
Commissioner Markopoulos.
So you mentioned that there were a lot of instances of this around the county where there was some overlappage. Have they been contacted? Do these people know that?
If I can interject there. Yes, typically the way they find out is they hire a surveyor. A surveyor defines the land of the properties that which people own, and their attorneys are responsible for doing their title search and their history. If there are things that come up as clouds, such as overlaps of property, that should be disclosed to the purchaser when they're buying the property. And the other concept is we do show those as conflict lines in the mapping world. Now that the age of GIS has come a little farther, we did have that in the original cadastre of our mappings of the Mylars since 1970. All of them displaying, in this case, around Lake Orange, the 615 to 620 contour line being owned by Lake Orange, Inc. Originally, Lake Orange was created because the town of Hillsborough was running out of water. We constantly ran out of water, and it was created as a water supply. That's why these 5 owners were together to create the lake.
Right. So if I had some overlappage and I didn't know about it, would I get a letter from your office telling me I had a problem?
Nope.
We would not be the
If you came
surveyors.
across it, because it sounds like you said you know of some.
Correct. And Well, okay, our last mapping project in which we found a lot of these was back in the 80s. And yes, we did send letters from the Land Records Office to the owners asking them to bring in any type of documentation they may have, whether it be an unrecorded survey or something to that effect, so that we could advise them to go ahead and put it on record. The maps themselves still depict the conflict lines as we find them as mappers, so.
And that would be what we know of, the
Correct.
conflicts that we are aware of, you know.
Yeah, I was just curious if the ones you
It's
knew
documented,
about,
but-
you were communicating that
Correct.
to the people to give them a heads up.
Correct.
Commissioner Price and then Green?
I would just say that the burden pretty much is on the homeowner, because I ran into the same situation. And if the realtor doesn't record, I mean, if you don't have the proper survey done, if it's not recorded, it just goes until you discover it yourself and have the survey done.
Commissioner Green?
Two questions, but the first one was just prompted by that. Is this a situation that the property owner's title insurance would be able to take care of?
If they purchased into it, possibly.
Okay, the other question is for John. Do you know if there's been any reported cases on the argument that Commissioner Dorris and I are making about an equitable solution of unjust enrichment when the government gets paid twice for the same taxable land?
I don't know of any.
Did you research that?
I have looked for that previously, not in this particular instance, but at that time I did not find any, and nothing like that has come over listservs recently. So
So it just hasn't come up in the courts?
I don't
that
believe
you
it has
know
at
of?
all.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bedford?
So if I voted yes to refund this money, and then a resident, a taxpayer objected, and I'm on the hook for it, am I on the hook for just the 1622 one time back to the county, or to every single taxpayer?
Oh, just back to the county one time. Everyone who voted in favor. If that happened, and I can't say that it would, but my job to tell you what I see as the risks, and that's one of the risks that I see in this.
Well, it seems to me, and I'm not a lawyer at all, I mean, it just seems to me that the law has tied the hands of our departments, of our tax office and our GIS folks, and that's why it's coming to the board. And I think the equitable, fair solution is to refund the money, and also, because we do now, it's on the public record, know that there are other property owners along Lake Orange who should be, I think they should be alerted that they might, all mites, they might want to consider having their survey done so that going forward, their taxes would be lower. Because I think that's just the right and just thing to do.
The owners around Lake Orange are routinely contacted by Lake Orange Inc. for the dues that they pay to cross that area of land, basically letting them know that Lake Orange Inc. still claims that land. So it's not a...
Well, I understand that, but I get my tax bill and I wouldn't know that anything about the contours or this part or that part. I would just say, okay, and if you have a mortgage, the mortgage company is just going to pay it. You just get it, you put it away.
But if you were...
that level of expertise.
Fees they have to pay,
Oh,
not
and
the
the
taxes,
fees.
yeah.
Yeah, but I still think you might not put it all together.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the board?
I would make a motion that we approve the resolution of denial of the refund request contained in the packet as per the manager's recommendation.
Well, second that.
Okay, so just to be clear, the motion is to deny the refund. You're saying approve and deny in the same sentence is confusing.
Yes.
Your motion is to deny the refund.
Yeah.
Okay.
To approve the resolution which denies the refund.
Okay, we got McKee and Markopoulos. Discussion. Commissioner Price.
So in this resolution, I was confused. It says, therefore be it resolved, the property tax refund recommended for denial are denied. It doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Oh, there it is, okay. I'm sorry, what was your question again, now that I have it in front of me?
It says, now therefore It is resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Orange County that the property tax refund recommended for denial are denied.
That would be correct. We are recommending for denial, and you are denying, or you would be denying.
Why don't you amend it to say the property tax refund is denied, so it's.
I will
Yeah.
amend that wording to state the property tax refund is
Denied.
recommended, is denied.
Commissioner Markopoulos, will you take that amendment?
Yes.
Commissioner Dorson?
Yeah, so I'm going to vote against this resolution for all the reasons I stated. I think this is a matter of just equity and fairness. I do think that this is, I read the phrase double taxation to encompass this scenario. And so, I think that county was unjustly enriched, not because of any intentional actions that we took. But it seems to me that that is the most reasonable way to handle this. And so I'm going to vote against the resolution.
Discussion? Anyone else? Commissioner Price?
Just to say that I do see the argument of double taxation. However, I understand also that this is prevalent throughout Orange County, and I think a lot of people are running into the same situation, and just once they discover it, having the survey done, and then the tax amount is corrected, and the property lines are corrected. It's unfortunate that some of these property lines and plats were recorded without, the advantage of modern technology and without good surveys. And there's a lot of these small margins, relatively small margins of land that are being taxed. I would love to be able to give everyone back, what they thought was a double taxation, but it's so prevalent throughout the county that I think we also risk just being specialized for one property owner. If there was a way to resolve it for everyone, I would be in favor.
Commissioner Markopoulos?
This is a tough call because I agree with a lot of what Commissioner Dorson is saying, but in the end, these problems are not created by the county, and we can't put ourselves in a position to, every time a surveyor makes a mistake or somebody doesn't do the right things at the time of the sale of the property, that we end up being the arbiter and the money distributor for something that we reasonably can't control. So that's why I feel like we have to support this denial.
Nancy, is it prevalent? Are there that many mistakes going on out in the county? I thought when we did the reval that we had everyone's property,
And
looked at.
that does correct any errors or any issues with, I have 2 bathrooms. No, I have 3.
Right.
I don't have 2 stories, I have 1. The revaluation does work great for that. But in this situation, this is a situation where you have a survey that we are required to, record, and we are required to tax by that information. So that's not something that we can fix, not even a revaluation. That has to be done between the landowners.
Right. I guess my question is the word prevalent makes me feel like it's happening all over the place. Is that indeed true?
You two would be better
Bonnie, you want to
able
answer that?
because
I
you
think
were-
Bonnie
I think what I would say to that is that we would not know that. And one of the things, I think this is an example of change in technology as well. As technology is changing, we're getting better at looking at the surveying. And so our staff in the tax administration office does not challenge surveys. We get a survey, it's recorded, and they take that survey, and that's how they tax. During the revaluation, they're just looking at value. They're not challenging surveys. And so as we look at that, I think maybe we'll see some. I don't think we know that there's a lot of these like this. We can't really say that. But we can, if we are aware or if something comes up that we can see from our our review, we will certainly let property owners know. But we don't send out surveyors to redo surveys.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Price, and then we're going to.
Yeah, well, I think what the issue is that a lot of these surveys, or, like, they were done years ago when it said, start at this tree, go to that stump, and go over to the oak tree, or something like that. And things have shifted. Center lines and roads are off, so I can tell you that in some of these older subdivisions, those property lines are questionable until you get another survey done, and yeah, he knows.
Okay. So we have a motion by McKee and second by Markopoulos. All those in not flavor, all those in favor, raise your hand, please, and say aye. Aye?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. Against?
No.
Okay, so motion passes 4-3 to deny. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. It was a good one, lesson learned. Thank you, Nancy and team, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a
Yes, sir.
question for the manager, periphery to this. Mr. Attorney, is there any reason this could not be settled or addressed by the parties themselves, like Orange and our petitioner?
No, I think that's more appropriate for the parties to deal with the issue.
Yeah, well, I mean, what are the parties? The county got the double money. We're the one who benefited.
I don't argue that.
I mean,
I'm simply asking a rhetorical question.
Right, I'm just saying, if it was me, and I paid, and you paid, and then you came to me and said, I think I paid unfairly, why don't you help me out? I would say, I already paid. I paid the county. That's where you need to go for your money. And I think that's the key here, is that the county, to Mark's point and Renee's point, and, whether this is prevalent or not, in this case, what the issue is that the county got paid twice.
I don't argue that.
They know that, but, my property line, it was up to me to go and establish the line.
Yeah.
Other than that, both of us were paying the county, but we couldn't argue to get anything back because the county was going by what they had on paper in their office, as opposed
No,
to
but
what
it's
was
different if
flagged.
you're having a fight over the boundary,
Well, that's what this is.
and then you're saying you're both paying for the same thing, right? That's different. Right, if you say you have 2 acres and your neighbor says they have 1 acre, and they say the line's here and you say the line there, somebody's paying for
Twice.
that property. Well, not necessarily twice. You
Well,
could be
that's-
disputing the border, but that's what happened here.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the consent agendas. Does anyone want to pull anything?
Do we have a closed session tonight,
We do
Captain?
not.
Okay.
Oh.
We do.
We do.
Oh, we do, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought,
We will be moving quickly. We
I'll
do.
move the consent agenda.
Second?
Second by Bedford, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, county manager's report.
I have nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. County attorney's report.
Mine's for closed session tonight.
Great, thank you. Okay. I apologize for not keeping up with that. We have lots of appointments to make.
All right.
So if we can try and move through these quickly, it would be great. So 11A is the Advisory Board on Aging, and we have one position, number 3, that's being recommended for Jeffrey Charles, and we have 3 positions that are open. As you recall, our sort of policy is to wait 6 months, and if after 6 months we can fill that position. What is the pleasure of the board?
Well,
I'd like to
Mr.
nominate
Chair,
Jeff.
what's your pleasure? I have nominations for all 4 of these positions. Would
Yes.
you like me to make them all at once, or do you prefer to do the recommended one and then the other 3?
I think we should do the recommended one first.
Okay?
Yeah, so
Well,
you want to take that?
I'll move Jeffrey Charles for position number 3.
Second.
Okay, Green is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. An A? Okay, we're good. All right, we have 8, 10, and 12. Commissioner Dorson.
Yeah, I'll move Takitha Collins for position 8, Karen Green McElveen for position 10, and Jerry Gregory for position 12.
Yes, second.
What was the last one, please, for position 12?
Jerry Gregory from Efland.
Okay, Collins,
Okay.
Matthew, and Gregory. And we have a second by Commissioner Green. All those in favor? Are there any other nominations?
No, that's what I was
Okay,
gonna do.
all those in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Against? Okay, so you got a full board there. Good job, Janice. All right, 11B, we have the Affordable Housing Advisory Board appointments, and one is being recommended for a second term is Keith Cook. Number 10, Douglas Boemker, second full term. And let's do those two first again, please.
I'll move Keith Cook for position 1 and Douglas Bumker for position 10.
Second.
Second by Price. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, we got 4, 7, and 13.
I'd like to nominate Adejuan, and I cannot pronounce his last name. I'll just say- oh.
May I say something, please? They are having a new director coming on. And
Yeah, I realize that.
their new
on
director, and
September
that's one
23rd.
reason why we didn't know if they wanted to fill those last positions or not.
Well,
Wanted to wait.
I wanted to, this person is a grad student, I'd like to take it, if we can get him
Y'all,
on.
it's a
take
pleasure of the
advantage-
board, so whatever y'all want to do, I just wanted to bring that up, just in case.
Okay, how does the board feel about filling these before the new person comes on?
I'm in
I don't-
favor.
Yeah, I don't know what the downside is.
Okay, great. Commissioner Price?
For position number 4, at the at-large position, Adejuan O, who's a grad student at
Sec-
UNC.
I'll second that.
So
Thank you.
here, this is the issue I was going to raise later on, but I'll do it now.
Sure.
I have a vague recollection of having ages listed on these at one time. Was it never was? Is there, it'd be interesting to me and informative if there were ages on here, thinking of, facilitating young leadership to get involved, right? It'd be,
That's age discrimination, isn't it? You don't
well,
have to give
you got
your
a lot
age.
of, you got a lot of other discrimination possibilities there, like what if you don't like social workers, or you don't like males, or whatever?
Yeah, I know. That's why some people
Well,
leave
neither
it
is
blank.
age, actually.
Anyway, that's just the thought. I would like to know, because I would like to, help younger people get involved
Well, I'm
in the
thinking
process.
he might be young.
Might be, but that's
Not
that's why I'm
sure.
raising the question,
I know.
because I had the same issue. I looked at it, put a question mark next to it, it looked pretty good. I mean, just because you're in graduate school, I mean, I've seen some pretty old graduate school students. You?
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Okay, so we have Mr. Ojubaban for position number 4.
I'd like to nominate Jim Eichel for number 7.
Second.
I'd like to nominate, I can't read my own handwriting, Jennifer Moore, I think her name is,
Second.
for number 13, whatever's left.
Okay,
And I'd like to nominate Kane Twyman.
for which position?
Oh,
We
God.
don't have another position open, so you would
I
have to.
know, 13.
Okay,
I know she's young.
Maybe we do one at a time.
Yeah.
okay, so
Okay.
position number 4, Mr. Obuban. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay. Position number 7, Commissioner Dorson, who did you say that was,
Green,
please?
Jim Eichel.
Oh, it was Green who
Jim
nominated.
Eichel, James Eichel.
James Eiffel, okay, Ms. Eiffel, and that was a second, right? We had a second for,
Yeah, that was
okay.
my second.
All right, all those in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then Commissioner, 13, we had
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
full term, 14, Justin Haslett, first full term.
Move all of those,
Second.
or nominate all of
By
them.
Bedford, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Okay, 11D is Board of Health, and we have one recommendation for Dr. Lee Pickett.
So moved.
Second.
All those any other nominations for that one? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 11E, okay, this is Orange County Visitors Bureau, and this slate was proposed by the nominating committee. Number 1 is Mayor Pam Heminger, and she would be taking Rachel Shavitz's place, and so it seems like it's an odd time for her to come in, but Rachel is leaving, so Pam would like to come in, and they passed a resolution Chapel Hill passed a resolution saying that they would like her to be there. Number 2 is Dixon Pitt. He's from the Chapel Hill Carborough Chamber of Commerce. Sam Vagama is Lodging Association, Spring Council Economic Development for Town of Carborough, and Matt Gladlick is the Chapel Hill Downtown Partnership.
I would
Nominate
move
all
the
of those.
slate.
Okay, I don't know, whoever wants it. Any additional nominations?
I'm good.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And just, I'm on this board, and just to let everyone know, we've really done, worked really hard to try and diversify this board, and this is a really good slate of showing that work right there, so,
Thank you.
yeah. 11F is the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee appointment. And do we need to know anything before I start this one, Donna?
No, is this that they vet their own here? This is a one-year training for this particular person.
Right.
And they have to vet these and do a one-year training and stuff before they recommend, so we cannot fill these.
So we are only going for
We're only
position
going
6
for
tonight?
Position
Okay.
6, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
folks, position 6 is Jacqueline Podger,
So moved.
Second.
second by McKee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? 11G is...
Well, I'd just like to
Yes, sir.
recommend that the committee, there's 2 at-large seats, there's 2 people who have put their names in, or 1 person who has put her name in, I guess, who was not nominated today, Linda Davis, so I hope that they'll follow up with her, so, since she's expressed interest and there's an at-large seat.
We'll pass that message on, Donna.
Will do.
Thank you, Commissioner Dorson. Okay, 11G, Orange County Parks and Recreation Council appointment, and they are recommending Cecile Kritz of Chapel Hill Township for position number 7.
So moved.
Second.
And second, any other nominations for that? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Okay, 11H, we're getting there, folks. Orange County Planning Board appointment. This is an at-large seat, and I know there's been some discussion about who should be who, so,
I'd like to, am I recognized?
sure you are.
I'd like to nominate Gio Molinito.
Mrs.
Second.
Gio Molinero,
And
okay.
I'd like to nominate Charity Kirk.
And who is yours? I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Charity Kirk, the industrial design expert,
Charity
lead,
Kirk.
green building expert.
Okay. I need a second on that, because we have...
Second.
Okay.
Okay, second on that, okay.
Could I ask for the nominators to speak to their recommendations?
Commissioner Dorson, you want to hit it first?
Sure, let me just pull up the application again. Well, Ms. Molinito is a longtime resident and is interested in getting involved with the county, and has been involved with El Centro Hispano, which I think is an important perspective to add to the planning board, and probably has connections in communities that I don't think we serve very well at this time.
And that's why I seconded it.
Okay, and Commissioner Markopoulos?
So Ms. Charity Kirk has a background in industrial design. She completed a master's in industrial design at NC State. She's very interested in bike and pedestrian issues and is well-versed in green building. And I think that we really need that perspective on the planning board.
Commissioner McKee, is that?
Yes, I
help you?
just,
They both sound like really
yeah,
great choices.
I don't have an issue with either one of them. I
I
just
know.
was curious.
Okay, how would folks like to do this? Because Commissioner Dorson nominated first. Do we want to go with that one first, and then we can go with the second nomination? Does that work for everyone? Okay, so let's see who wants Ms. Gio Melandino. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hands. Okay, 4.
Against? Okay, so that passes.
So I would just like to say that it was really impressive looking at the list of people. for
Really
all of
impressive.
these.
Once
I mean, this
again,
was-
yeah.
I mean, it even surpassed other rosters of people.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting some really qualified people as, as evidenced by the fact that so many of us had different picks and they were all really, really solid.
Really good.
And then one last thing on the age issue. Is that something we're not interested in, or is that something that we would entertain as a bit of information to help us provide opportunities for younger citizens?
Since I've been on the board, we have never had the age as part of our application, and I'm not sure if many cities or counties actually have age. I don't know if it's considered age discrimination or whatever. I do not know that, but I know that in our applications, we have not.
I mean, I always think about that. Does anybody else look at that
Yeah,
and
I
go, I
do
wonder how
too.
old they are and if they would,
Well, my response to that would be that they do, I think, have their phone numbers or emails, and we're always free to reach out to them.
well, if I just had their age on there, it'd save me a lot of time.
Well, I'd be interested in having that also. I mean, I don't think it's discrimination unless you do something discriminatory based on some protected class. I mean, people have their race on there, and so that's certainly, I mean, you could just ask, and it could be discretionary, and we ask them how long they lived in the county. I mean, we could, I don't think there's any, I don't think there's
We'll
any
research
problem
it a
with
little
it.
bit further. and bring
Yeah,
back
do you
some
want to come back and
information.
see if anyone's doing that? And if it's the exact age or if it's like a category of age, like is it, range
Yeah,
of
let me
age,
do a little bit of
something
research,
like
little
that.
surveys. Okay.
Because it's not a bad idea. I mean, we are always looking for diversity, and age is one of the diversities that we won't be able to tell unless it's written down, so it's.
There's a lack of young participants in leadership,
Well, I think they want to get here, they just don't know how.
or we don't know they're young.
Yeah,
Maybe we need a special youth advisory committee,
that sounds awesome.
specifically targeted to issues involving young people. or
Is that a
younger
petition?
people. Yeah, sure.
I like that. Okay. So there are information items in the back. Things are complete, we're still working on. You can take a look at that. And with that, I need a motion to go into closed session.
Got it.
Do you want to read that, or you're going to just say you got it? Pursuant to GS 143-318.11A3, to consult with an attorney retained by the board in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the board.
So moved.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Okay. Motion to adjourn? Okay.
Into closed session.
Into closed session.
Got him out.